there may be two countries who might be going to war with each other soon. And I thought I would share some perspectives from my yogic training, infectious disease training, and public health training, and to kind of integrate them all into one to how we can view this scenario. And mostly for those of us who see situations that go on in the world and are deeply affected by it and would love to in some way or another be able to affect it, but we might feel powerless in some way. This is a perfect chat for us to explore a little bit what we could possibly do in this situation. Because I don't feel that every single person watching this or living in this life is powerless at all. Like, there's so much power that we have access to influence, to change, to impact someone's life with just one of our words, that we must speak if we have something to say. So I would like to also encourage you from the get-go that if there's anything that you feel motivated to say about this war that you think would positively contribute to it, share it. Share it on your social medias, share it on your YouTubes, share it on your Facebooks, wherever. Share it with your friends, have conversations about it. And don't think that you need to have some sort of permission, a degree, a qualification of any kind to be able to speak about this issue, these types of issues, because you are a citizen of this world. And by that, you have the right to speak about conditions of this world. Aristotle has a quote that talks about how the needs of the world and your talents, in the middle lies your vocation. So, especially in times of war, you must think to yourself, what are your talents that you have been gifted with? And what are the needs of the world at this present moment that you are interested and have a passion to contribute a dialogue about, and to combine those two and to have a conversation about it. So this happens to be one of mine. Speaking about global health is really the title, I would say. And then the rest are just details. So whenever anything happens in life, you meet a person, you feel a little upset, or something's going on in the world. This is usually a reflection of our inner life at all times. If you're in tune with yourself, when you see these signs and symbols in the outside world, you immediately can recognize how that is actually mirroring your internal world. So the fact that our outer world is now currently experiencing a possible war, we must, instead of looking outwards and just being obsessed with the spectacle of what could be or what is going to happen or how that might affect us and all these things, we must switch our gaze from the outside world to the inside world to see what is the internal war that is currently bubbling inside of us, that a vast majority of us are in that state where it would collectively reflect in the outside world. Now, traditionally, wars happened first and infectious diseases happened second. This was the case for the 1918 Spanish influenza, The First World War was ended because of actually the Spanish influenza, because people were dying prior to going to war, to going to battle. And this is a common scenario in war times. People die more from infectious diseases, from lack of hygiene, being in the trenches, dying from diarrhea, not having enough food, in dire situations. That infectious diseases are the things that usually wipe out an entire army before they go to war. So if you see the causes of death in a war, it is mostly from infectious diseases, not from battle, war wounds, or anything like that. So that just goes to show how deplorable war is, that the conditions of war are so unsightly, so unseemly, so not correlated or aligned with laws, that before you can even go into battle, something else will wipe you out, because a virus, something even tinier. Because when you are about to go to war, you must have a lot of thoughts and emotions and different things inside first to even get to that stage of war, right? So it's not really war that causes death. It's actually all of those internal emotions and voices and perceptions and beliefs and values that actually almost internally wipe someone out from the inside, symbolically speaking. Outward speaking, we have that reflected in infectious diseases, which I've said in many of my YouTube channels and other membership portal chats about the COVID virus, is that a virus in a pandemic proportional level really is reflecting of a society's level of the lack of understanding of the oneness of humanity, like the true oneness of how our identities as human beings are first and foremost souls, spirits. That's primary identity. And our secondary identity are all of the qualifiers, like I am a woman, I am ethnically Persian, I'm Canadian, I grew up in China, I speak these languages. These are the secondary identities that we all have that distinguish us from each other, and that they're like different colors of roses in one garden. So when we forget our primary identity, it is when we have violations of a spiritual law, more like consequences rather than punishments. Many people think of this as like they speak about infectious diseases as divine punishment, or it occurs in the Bible. Don't know of any specific, actually, yeah, it does also in the Quran and in many other holy books. Like infectious diseases are always like present, right? From my perspective, studying public health and global health, it's like a mirror. Every physical thing in the world has a material reflection to it. So, meaning a violation of a spiritual law like the oneness of humanity will reflect in the material life the shadow of that if it's not fulfilled. So it's like basically if you're not following the laws of gravity, you break your leg, something like that. But the law of the oneness of humanity is not really something that can be seen and observed or measured, like 9.8 meters per second squared, and also given a unit. So these are less known, fixed spiritual laws, but that any true spiritual practitioner knows that this is fundamental, knows that this is a truth. So the opposition of this truth would be an infectious disease. And so how does this relate to our present state? Actually being in a pandemic first, violating that oneness of humanity law, spiritual law, which is fixed. It is immovable. There are three types of laws in the world: physical laws like gravity, Newton laws of motion, laws of thermodynamics. Then you have man-made laws. These are legal laws like red light, green light, divorce lawyers, family, domestic life, corporate businesses like suing each other. That's man-made laws, right? We came up with that stuff. And then we have the spiritual laws, which are laws that were given by divine manifestations of God. These are the three categories of laws, usually. And the spiritual laws and the physical laws are fixed, are unchangeable. And they are usually mirrored to one another. For every physical law, you can find a spiritual law that symbolically correlates to it. The man-made laws change over time, depending on which era of the earthly life you've lived in. You might be experiencing different laws and receiving different punishments in different kind of ways. And that is evolving and that changes. Spiritual laws and material laws do not change. So when we're talking about a COVID outbreak and we're talking about spiritual laws that are being broken, you will see manifested in our physical life the mirror of that. So it's actually first the breaking of the spiritual law that you will see the physical law also be reflected. Mutations in cells, random just cancer cell growth in a human body. All of these are different ways that they're manifest in the world when you violate a spiritual law and principle. So how is it that we are currently in a COVID global pandemic and now there is a war coming? It's interesting in that sense that usually in our history, it's usually a war happens first and then an outbreak. But in this circumstance, it is first an outbreak and then a war. Like we wonder like how we even have time for that, right? But what I wanted to share in this talk specifically is to see how war is reflected in our internal world. So when you witness war, imminent war about to happen on the outside world, you must see what is the war that was raging inside of you or bubbling up inside of you. It might not have occurred, or you might actually be still battling an illness right now. None of these are randoms. Our inner bodies, the health of our bodies are reflected in the health of our outside world. When you see pollution, when you see fog, when you see the ozone layer breaking, there are equal diseases that are manifested within the human body, symbolically representing the exact same thing. So war, the battle within. When we see war on the outside, we might think that these are countries that are far away from us, that we have no relevance to them, or we don't really know them or know much about them. We just know they're far away, so thank God, right? They're far away and that they're not close. But that's not actually how life works. Life doesn't work like that. We're all connected at all times, regardless of where you are in the world. Energetically speaking, physically speaking, it might take some time to get to you, but it'll get to you eventually. The symptoms of it will get to you eventually. And so it is false to think that you do not have power right now in your hands to do something about it. And this is where I want to focus on mostly for today, is what we can do individually in these circumstances when a war is about to bubble up in the world, in our outer world, in our physical world, in our news, wherever we see it. We just want to stop seeing it, right? We just want to stop. The first thing we must do is we must accept the reality. We cannot be in denial and do something constructive about it. So first is accept that this is the case. And I will tell you that in my previous years, when I was learning about World War II, I remember thinking in my 15-year-old mind, if I were to live to see World War III, that might be the only circumstance where I would commit suicide. Out of shame, living in a society where the people around me would condone such a thing. Fast forward 15 years later, hey, we're here, right? But I can tell you that I do not feel that disempowerment of wanting, to the extent of wanting to end my own life out of the shame of what I witnessed in the world. I actually feel quite empowered today. And I wish to also share that, how you can also empower yourself. And that is to use the outer reflection of a war to test and measure the inner reflection of war within you. So what does that mean exactly? That means you go within yourself. If you've started to get to know yourself through self-inquiry methods, like asking yourself questions, doing any meditations, breath work, you're already on this path. So don't think too much about like what that means. If you just ask a question to yourself, what is the war that is happening within me? Answers will come to you as to where are the conflicting parts that you must reconcile first within yourself. So I just recently did this practice this morning, fresh, not long ago, where I was thinking, what is the war raging within me? And I've recently been attracting a lot of types of people that I would like no association with, zero. I feel disgusted by their behavior. I'm shocked and appalled by their lack of empathy. I've never seen such lack of empathy or self-centeredness in my life before. But I know better than to think that these are qualities within someone else. I know, as a yoga therapist, this is what I teach my clients all the time. Anything that you recognize within someone else that you don't like, you have it within you. And there are even specific words, diagnostic words that they use in psychology to describe these types of people. Some may say they're narcissist because they lack empathy, they crave attention, and I forgot what the third one was, but just things that I does not agree with my system. But I recognize it. So I can't be in denial to say that I don't have these qualities within me. It takes a bit of bitter poison to swallow about yourself This is where acceptance occurs first. You must accept that whatever is in your external world is a reflection of your internal world. So I'm not going to say that this was quick for me, because I'm much quicker to tell other people how their inner and outer reflections are going. Of course, it takes a little bit more time on myself. We're all in denial, right? So it took me a couple of days that I've been in reflection where I was like just being in disgust, disdain from these sort of people and actions, and being like, oh, I can't believe it, how I'm even witnessing such a thing on this planet. Today, I became a little humble and accepted that if I am able to recognize these qualities, it means that I have it in mind. But I must dig through the fluff and perception of myself of being a really good person, because I'm a therapist. My primary thing is to help people. That is what I do for a living. But it doesn't mean I'm perfect and I'm only light. Every time you discover more light about yourself, you actually equally discover more shadow. So I was thinking, I don't agree with the word as a narcissist to me. It doesn't also technically describe my entire personality, right? But I'm like, okay, let me just say I have a little bit of this. Where does it manifest in my life? And the answer came to me that it has to do with the feminine, and it has to do with the mother and the matriarchy. And I was like, okay, I've been dealing with some female generational trauma lately. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. It's within the same lines, right? And then I was also reflecting of these people, and I could recognize some of them having issues with their mother. And then I was like, all right, we're getting close. We're getting hotter. And I was reflecting that when it comes to my own mother, I am less forgiving about things that she has done. And as a therapist, we teach other people how to set boundaries. And I remember a very clear boundary I set a couple of years ago with my mother, that she was reading a lot of things on the news and things like that. And it really affects me. It really, truly, deeply affects me. And I was telling her that I didn't want her to tell me any more about her thoughts, because it was a burden to my soul, and that I would spend hours reflecting and processing things that she would tell me and that she would burden me with. And it came to a point where I thought it was very mature. I sat her down. I was very fragile and I was very vulnerable with her. And I expressed that I did not want her to share her pain with me anymore. No. That as a therapist, I must have boundaries of my own. And mine is drawn to my mother. After all, isn't a mother the one who is supposed to take care of you? I'm like, even if I'm a therapist, like my mom's still my mom. I still expect her. I have expectations of her, of doing her motherly duties. And I realized my compassion for my clients do not extend in the same way as to my mother. And I was reflecting on this, and I was sharing how I was thinking how these narcissistic tendencies of mine come up in this relationship, where I am unempathetic of her pain. I do not want to see her in pain. In fact, I cannot see her in pain. It upsets me so much. With my clients, if something like that were to happen, I would be working on it to be like, oh, like, hey, I need to expand myself even further so that I can hold even bigger space for them. Never with my mother. Never. I'm just like, that's a boundary. I set it a long time ago. I was successful at it. It was good. I was brave. I did it. I don't need to think about it anymore. Now it is being brought up in this situation of war. My internal war is everyone else is okay. I can hear everyone else's pain except my mother's. And if you think about it, the mother, the quality of the mother is to show love, unconditional love to everyone at all times. It's mostly her children, right? This is like law. This is equivalent to like law form. Your mother is supposed to represent the unconditional love that God has for you. So I know my mother she really does love me unconditionally. And anytime I have pain, I go to her. No one holds space for me like she does. No one will listen to me like she does. I do not question her loving me unconditionally. Yet my love to her is conditional upon her behaving properly, her changing her manners when I don't like it, and her adjusting herself or needing to accommodate me and my needs. Because I'm the child, I have the right, or so I thought. So this was the tiny little war that was happening within me that I was unaware of up until this morning. So when you think about war and you think about the grandness of war, we must all turn our gaze inwards. And as soon as I recognized that, I felt like a huge release. I was yawning. Usually I cry when it comes to these things. I did not cry because it was a very centered sort of realization where I knew it was so true and I had zero resistance to it. Usually the wars inside of me that I bring peace about they have a much more tumultuous reaction within me. Like I cry for days, I reflect for days. It is not so centered as this morning's realization, but I did have several bouts of that kind of breath, that childlike breath, or yawning, lots of yawning, where these are different forms of release. Some people burp, some people fart. Some people cry, some people go to the bathroom, vomit, different ways of releasing. But you've released when you feel a little bit lighter. So what I would like to ask everyone to do for the external war that is bubbling up inside is for us all to invite everyone to direct our gaze inwards and to be brave, to really be brave. I don't want to make this sound like an easy thing to do. It takes courage every time we look within. And it's scary because we don't know what's there. And most likely than not, we're not going to like what's there. And so for us to be brave enough to turn inwards, to be like, if I want to stop this external war enough, I must be brave within myself. I must turn my gaze within myself and see which war I can quelch with light, the light of my awareness. Which war with is the internal war that is occurring that is exacerbating this external world from occurring? I still have many more battles within myself that I need to quench if I want to really see an external change of what's going to happen. And of course, this is not just going to be my own individual work. There actually needs to be a significant number of people doing this on a collective level. It might seem significant in terms of numbers, but in terms of a percentage of the world, only 1% really needs to be conscious of this to bring these external wars to a halt. So only a few of us need to really do this in order to make a change. It is not needed like vaccines. A majority of people need to be vaccinated in order for us to be safe from the virus. It doesn't work like that. If enough of our internal systems are calibrated to peace within, it will reflect in our relationships and our outside world. And that's something that if enough of us were to do that, we would see a change in the outside world. So I want to invite us to look within and to talk to the different voices within us and get to know it. Bring the voices that are in the shadow to light. Just by shining light and awareness on it, you diffuse the energies. It's like almost putting water on a fire, on a kindling fire. You quench it. It's like you suffocate the fire that is about to erupt. It doesn't move forward. So enough of us must balance the war within. Who was mistreated in this war? What needs to be reconciled? How do we go about it? We need to sit and have a chat, consultation, have a little debate, internal debate as to what are the pros and cons of these things and who wins and is there a winner when it's within. If your heart and your kidneys have a conversation and they disagree, there will be imbalance in the entire system. But if the heart and the kidneys both remember that they are in existence to bring balance and equilibrium to the entire body, they can have a conversation about, okay, now I can take a little bit of a hit. I'll work on this part a little bit so that you can, if you need to pump harder for other things, I'll take a hit here. How is balance brought back within your internal system? Bring it back. Bring it back. Be brave. I'm with you. I'll be praying for you to do this. To go within, to really uncover the war within. Just the uncovering is so powerful. It diffuses the bomb. It diffuses energies. And you also gain awareness and you're able to move better in the world with more clarity, more vision, more creativity. It frees up a lot of your energy because war takes a lot of energy to do. Another thing I wanted to share was a mantra. The 5th meditation of the Bicentenary Meditation Project is a 95 repetition of the verse, Ya Ilah al-Mustaqath, which means he who is invoked. And this is a verse that Abdul Baha, the center of the covenant in the Baha'i faith, also known as the master, he repeated this verse over and over again during World War II to bring it to an end. And Abdul Baha was also knighted by the British Empire then, British government, for providing food during a famine that I think was associated with a war. And that his efforts in relieving, feeding the poor, feeding the army, in fact, that he was knighted. I personally don't believe it is random that this year is the centenary passing of Abdul Baha. And at the same time, another war is coming. I don't think those two things are random events. But I do think we need to draw on the spirit of Abdul Baha now more than ever in how we behave during a war, in what our energies and minds are focused on during a war, is for us to alleviate other people's sufferings in any way that we can. Going back to the quote that I mentioned in the beginning, where Aristotle says, the needs of the world and your talents, in the middle lies your vocation, lies your purpose, lies your job, lies your career. So if there's something that you can do in your life right now, in your line of talents and your interested needs, do it. And whatever internal battle you are fighting, fight it. Have the bravery to fight it, because it will ultimately bring peace to the external world faster. There is no greater act that you can do, a service to the world, than look within yourself, having the bravery to look within and calming the war within yourself, between polarizing parts within you. If you can learn to balance, to harmonize, to love, to bring into union, be like an arbitrator where you're bringing two parties together, and before you even go to court, you try to settle the issue by seeing what each party wants, what they need. Look within the parts of yourself and see what each part needs, so that they are not in battle with one another, because that is not the natural thing, but they both need to be heard. They need to be seen. Their pains need to be acknowledged. Another practical thing that we can do is, whenever we feel this sort of identify a pain, is to inhale and say, I see you. And then in the exhale, say, I'm here for you. Do this a couple times, inhaling, I see you. And then exhaling, I'm here for you. So that the parts of your internal world knows that you are a safe boss, a safe CEO, a safe ruler for them to share and open their problems with you, and know that you would give them a fair trial. Listen to them cool-heartedly to balance the parts of yourself within. that's all I had to share for today.